Good afternoon. Welcome to the Connect Plus webinar series. For those of you that have been to our other series sessions, it's called Win the Amenities Race. Connect your building with customized transportation solutions. Today's webinar is titled You Are Here, Transportation Wayfinding and Architecture. My name's Justin Shore. I'll be the moderator for today's session, and I'm a principal with Wells & Associates. I lead our TDM planning practice and do so along with my colleague, Courtney Menjivar, who you've been receiving emails from. She leads our TDM operations practice. Before we dive into today's webinar, there are a few housekeeping items that I wanted to share with our audience. First of all of you are in listen-only modes, and that's so that our panelists can present without any disruptions. That said, if you have questions, you will be able to enter them in the control panel on the right. And there's a section in there called the questions section where you can enter those. But we just ask that out of respect for our panelists, you hold your questions until the end of the presentation. We will have about 10 minutes after the presentation for anybody in the audience to ask our panelists questions. Also wanted to point out that we have handouts available, and you'll see that in the control center under the handout section. You can download that at any time. Also, this webinar will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available to all registrants by close of business tomorrow. And last but not least, this is our opportunity to learn a little from you, especially as we wrap up this webinar series. There will be a survey at the end of the webinar. And if you could, just take a minute or two to stay at the end of the webinar and fill that out, that would be great. We'll also send a link to the survey, as I mentioned, with the recording tomorrow. But again, if you can just take a minute to fill it out, whether it's immediately afterwards or in the next day, we'd greatly appreciate any feedback so that when we do our next webinar series, we can learn from the feedback from you and make sure it's an even better program moving forward. So the theme of our webinar series, as for those of you that have been attending, and especially for those of you that are here the first time, is who is winning the amenities race? And it's designed to showcase examples of properties across the country that have figured out different creative ways to position themselves to be ahead of the pack, and do that by connecting their properties with customized transportation solutions. In the process, these examples that we've been giving you are all enriching the value of their properties and assets. And so we've gone through a number of different scenarios in the previous 5 webinars, but today we'll talk about something a little different than what we've talked about in the past. So if you've ever seen the movie Field of Dreams, you'll remember the phrase that they used about a baseball stadium, and it goes, if you build it, they will come. Now, we've used this slide in another of our webinars, but it's appropriate for this one as well, because when it comes to mixed-use development, if you build it, yeah, they will come, but they'll likely get lost along the way if you don't give them an intuitive way to find it and to navigate around it. And if that's the case, then they're less likely to come again. And so with that, wayfinding is the key to getting tenants and visitors to all the transportation assets on the site. And during today's webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll focus on how mixed-use properties are retaining their customer base by creating a unique sense of place and helping them navigate a site more effectively. So our panelists will explore different questions about that, which will include things like what makes a great place, and how can signage and wayfinding ensure there's a positive experience for visitors. And questions like, why is public space programming increasingly being offered by mixed-use properties as an amenity to their tenants? So with that, I am going to turn our webinar over to today's panelists. Our speaker today will examine these questions from the perspective of both the designer that works closely with the large mixed-use development, and looking at that both from new and existing properties nationally. Her name is Sarah Huey Coleman. She is the founder of Huey Design Incorporated and founded it in 1996 after completing the design of the Centennial Olympic game in Atlanta. She is the creative director for large-scale mixed-use, retail, hospitality, sports, corporate, and transit designs. She's successfully managed a number of challenging projects in multiple cities and really places her firm at the top of their field. Sarah and Huey Design provide branding, signage, wayfinding for some of the highest profile and award-winning programs, not just in the Southeast where she's from, but nationally as well. They develop the visual and functional aspects of that wayfinding, branding, mapping, information design. And it's not just her job, it's her passion. And I can speak from firsthand experience about that because I've had the pleasure of working closely with Sarah and her team on a very, very complex wayfinding project in the University Circle District of Cleveland, Ohio, where we were dealing with multiple garages and getting people to find their way to them effectively. In that time, I got to see in action how their founding principles guide both Sarah and her staff through every project. And they really do these founding principles well. They listen to their client objectives, they provide personal service and excellent design, and all the while building wonderful partnerships. So regardless of the project type, Sarah's team generates fresh ideas and does so in a very timely manner. So it's my pleasure to have worked with her, but more importantly today to introduce her and turn over today's webinar for her to talk about wayfinding and branding from the designer's perspective. Sarah?
Thank you, Justin, for this wonderful opportunity to share our expertise. It's been wonderful to work with you on the University Circle project, and I look forward to continuing that work. Collectively, our biggest question today is what makes a great place? At Huey Design, early collaboration is the key to designing a dynamic user experience. We feel it's the collective process where architects, developers, lighting, landscape, and experiential graphic design professionals brainstorm concepts as a team that creates a compelling, seamless experience. Our best practices are changing in relation to transportation wayfinding and architecture. As an industry, we need to do more to identify a project's connectivity to multimodal transportation options and to communicating transportation schedules. Human behavior has changed with the advent of car services like Uber and Lyft, bike rentals, and the increased use of buses and rapid transit. One developer we're working with now has raised the ceiling height in their garage so that as the need for parking spaces declines, they'll be able to expand their retail, office, and residential offerings into converted parking levels. Developers are increasing their emphasis on community gathering spaces and connectivity. All of our current projects are being designed with larger drop-off areas. Developers are focusing on experiences. Simon is spending $4 billion on experiential development and renovation. Phipps Plaza Shopping Mall in Atlanta, Georgia is undergoing an expansion that includes a new-to-market food experience, hotel, and office tower. Shopping Centers Today quotes a Buxton expert in consumer analytics who says that the formula for success in retail development today is 70% food, entertainment, and lifestyle experiences, and only 30% retail. At Huey Design, we continue connecting people to place by creating signage and branding with a compelling presence that says, "You are here." We're seeing more mixed-use projects, restaurants and office buildings, parks, dog gardens, and community gathering spaces, all of which are connecting to transit, trails, parks, bike paths, and local amenities. Businesses are scouting and relocating to well-connected cities with a wide variety of transportation amenities in order to attract the best employees. The branded gateway in this image invites visitors into Boulevard East, which opened last year. It's part of AVALON Phase 2, a mixed-use project in Alpharetta, Georgia. In addition to restaurants by locally famous chefs, walkable retail, and an Apple store, it includes a full-service hotel and conference center. Ponce City Market is another mixed-use project in Atlanta with retail, residential, and office connected to the Atlanta Beltline. Ponce City Market hosts farmers markets on the weekends, and they've added a dog valet where you can drop off your pup while you shop, dine, lead a business meeting, or just walk the Beltline. The roof at Ponce City Market attracts families and the happy hour crowd with its midway experience, which includes skee ball, ring toss, and putt-putt golf. As experiential graphic designers, our mission is to deliver on a brand's promise by designing wayfinding elements that are clear, easy to understand, instill confidence, direct, educate, and inspire. Project amenities and features allow visitors to have positive experiences and create memories. Amenities like walkability, fountains, and event spaces inspire emotional connections to a place and build on the brand. It's imperative that visitors have a positive first impression and arrival experience. There's nothing worse than getting frustrated because you can't access a project easily, find a parking place, or locate your choice of transportation. If you're frustrated, then you won't have a positive experience. Branding and signage is the front door to a project. Traditionally, we've focused on making the parking garage feel safe by painting it white, increasing light levels, and providing thorough wayfinding systems. We can't stop there. The arrival experience is now multimodal and includes independent car services, transportation, and even a dog walker or two. Visitors are encouraged to linger longer to enjoy the green space, sit on benches, play in fountains, or try yoga in the park, or use Wi-Fi. When visitors have time to linger, they typically decide to go into another shop, run an additional errand, grab a coffee or an ice cream cone. Lingering is good for business. When transportation schedules are readily available and easy to understand, then visitors can base the length of their stay on traffic reports or the next departure. At 2.3 million square feet and costing over $600 million, AVALON is one of the most ambitious projects in Atlanta's history and has established a new standard for all experiential mixed-use projects. This is as described by the ICSC U.S. Design and Development Awards Committee in 2017. AVALON won a gold award. It was developed by North American Properties. At a glance, AVALON includes 90,000 square feet of upscale retail shops and restaurants, 276 luxury rental homes over retail, 250,000 square feet of Class A office building over retail, and 300 square feet of Class A office building. It also includes a 325-key full-service hotel and conference center. AVALON's connected to Alpharetta's inner and outer loops, portions of which are still under construction. The loops are park-like with multi-use trails that create a network for both pedestrians and cyclists. The inner loop, shown in red, connects AVALON, the large blue area on the right, to the city center, which is in the upper left corner of the map. The outer loop is shown in gold and runs between AVALON and Georgia 400. The bus route on Old Milton Parkway connects to a rapid transit system and is illustrated in green. The two yellow asterisks on Old Milton Parkway are actually representative of iconic sculptures that welcome visitors to Avalon and really identify the project. The largest sculpture closest to Georgia 400 fulfills Alpharetta's request for a gateway element. The sculptures were curated by Huey Design and created out of aluminum composite by Marty Daw. He's an internationally recognized sculptor with Cherry Lion Studios. The sculptures are an interpretation of the logo, which represents an apple tree. Avalon means island of apples or island of paradise, which is said to be the resting place of the fictitious King Arthur. Branding and signage create a visitor's first impression. Together, they visually and physically link a project to the outside world. Internally, branding elements and signage connect people to place and lead visitors on an experiential journey. This pedestrian gateway is positioned at the intersection of Alpharetta's Inner Loop and Avalon. It's the primary entry for cyclists and visitors on foot. Once inside Avalon, vehicular and pedestrian scaled signage reinforces the brand while directing to project buildings, retail tenants, and amenities. Avalon hosts more than 100 annual events. Visitors are encouraged to linger longer, enjoy the green space, sit on the benches, try yoga, and use the Wi-Fi. This is a gateway element that's in front of the Greenway Park, and during the winter, it's an ice skating rink. It's also directly in front of the theater. One of Avalon's best amenities is the concierge, and this is positioned right next to that gateway we just saw. It provides resort-inspired services. This unique approach, offered to both visitors and residents, includes transportation services. It's centrally located next to the drop-off area. The interactive directories strategically positioned along Avalon Boulevard are another information resource. If transportation schedules and options haven't been integrated into these directories, then they present a prime opportunity for amenity expansion. Street name signs, blade, post and panel directional signs reflect the brand and assure that wayfinding is clear and consistent throughout the properties. The Whole Foods directional sign you see is actually at the edge of the garage and is directing pedestrians from Avalon Boulevard through the deck and out to a freestanding Whole Foods market. The dog park ID incorporates a branded finial and even shows one of those dog walker modes of transportation we discussed earlier. As an overview, this map visually locates the sign types that we've talked about and transportation locations. From the icons, you can see the bus and the bicycle routes clearly identified. The parking signs are over the actual decks rather than, say, the surface parking areas. This is Avalon Boulevard that you can see here. This is our centrally located valet and car service drop-off area, the concierge, the pedestrian gateway, the fountain, the green space, and ice rink. We have monuments that are at each of the entries. The two iconic sculpture elements that we talked about, which denote the edges of the property on the main thoroughfare. And then our pedestrian and gateway for cyclists, people arriving on foot. The pedestrian signs and digital directories are really located along Avalon Boulevard. This is Boulevard East. That was the Phase 2 expansion. And over here are the hotel and conference center. So in closing, I really wanted to leave you with a fun, colorful graphic since graphics is one of our main focuses. We created the custom pictograms included in this set while developing Ponce City Market's 3D directory map. All of these pictograms are related to transportation, whether it's within or to and from the project. They're pictograms for Zipcar, bicycle amenities, electric car charging stations, the dog ballet, and of course our favorite, You Are Here. At Huey Design, we really want to lead the way by emphasizing the importance of transportation connectivity as a project and wayfinding amenity. Thank you for listening.
And Sarah, thank you for presenting. That was a great case study with AVALON. Not just a very cool project overall, but just the breadth of what you looked at, from accessing the site to navigating the site, as well as the different types of signage to different scale. But it certainly led to me having a bunch of questions, and I'm sure our audience does as well. But while we wait for our audience to share their questions with us, I have a few that I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
Great, thank you. So the first one, you obviously have a long experience with wayfinding and working with developers of different kinds. In your experience, what outcome are developers and property owners most interested in seeing when they're asking for a wayfinding system? What's their end game? What are they looking for?
Well, I think with a wayfinding system, when it's good, you end up having a positive experience, and you really don't think about the wayfinding. It's just the information is there when you need it, whether you're in a vehicle or a car. One of the primary focuses for a wayfinding system is clearly identifying the project. Where can you access? How do you get into it? We even do some exit directionals, helping people get to the right freeways project may be surrounded by major highways and freeways, and so helping people exit is also something that we do. One of the, as I mentioned earlier, having clear, consistent directionals, using the branding to create consistency allows visitors to look for a certain color or an icon or a pattern that signifies, hey, this is part of the signage. This is where I can find information. So even now, we're having more and more integrated signage and wayfinding. All of what we do also has to connect to the wayfinding that you can find on your phone. So there's a lot to think about, and our parameters are not just the project anymore. It's really all about connectivity, whether it's with transportation or through mobile devices.
I like the dual play on connectivity. It's a great word that captures so much, but it really is about making sure people get to what they want in terms of information or destination.
Right.
I love that.
The arrival experience is really so important. I talked about if you're frustrated, you're already mad before you get to your meeting or go into a shop to pick out that dress or whatever it was you were looking for. And if you're in that frame of mind, it's difficult to have a positive experience. So we feel like signage and wayfinding really eases the way and paves the way and leads visitors into the project so that they can have a positive experience.
Absolutely. Their first and last impression is leaving or entering and leaving the development, and couldn't agree more that making that experience a positive one makes them want to come back. Another question for you, Sarah, is, when you mentioned with Avalon that you had different types of signage. You have some signage that's for transit stops, and some is for parking, and some is for pedestrians. Taking into consideration that each of those audiences are a little different, what factors do you take into consideration when designing? So, for example, somebody going to a transit stop might be walking versus somebody who is looking for a parking garage might be driving. How does that impact the design of your sign?
Exactly. You're exactly right. In one case, you're really, with transportation, you're primarily looking at pedestrians and providing wayfinding for pedestrians. If it's somebody that's using a car service like Uber, obviously, the wayfinding coming into the project is similar to the parking, where we would have separate directionals. Sometimes we have specific directionals that are really only parking related, and we also use specific directional signs that are dedicated to directing you to a drop-off area or a concierge. With parking, we end up focusing mostly on the arrival experience and say directionals within the parking garage to help you get out and find parking spaces. We're seeing a lot more projects integrating the digital parking counting systems, and so we're integrating those into our signage now. I think that having with transportation, you're going to have to put more emphasis on pictograms, locating transportation stops on maps, and integrating that level of detail into your map, whether it's on your digital phone or it's a printed map that you can get at the project. I think it's really mainly that difference and a difference in scale as to whether you're dealing with vehicles or pedestrians.
That's great. And so when you say pictograms, that's kind of like what you had on your last slide. Is that these
right.
icons? Okay.
Correct.
No, that's great.
Yeah,
and that's like you said.
A new pictogram that obviously we're seeing and creating is the one where you've got the cell phone and it's calling a car. So trying to simply, depict that in a clean pictogram style, it takes a little work, but it's getting to be one of those internationally recognized symbols that people understand.
No, that's and that actually segues nicely into one last question I have, Sarah, which is, another trend we're seeing at properties across the country is bike share stations. And I guess, what wayfinding techniques would you use either within the development or outside of it to help people understand where a bike share station is? Is that a pictogram like you described? Is there some, directional signage with that? How would that work?
Yeah, I really liked one of your opening images that showed all of the bike share kind of promotional material right around that bike share location. We have bike shares actually around our office because we're very close to the Beltline, which is pedestrian and bicycle oriented. And part of what actually attracts people to the bikes here, without necessarily having a sign that's written that says, here's the bike share, they're very bright blue. And so whenever you're driving, you notice the color, and color can actually be part of a wayfinding system without having necessarily words that say bike share. But when you're driving around the neighborhood and you see these bright blue bikes, automatically when they showed up, you're like, what is that? And now, of course, everybody knows what they are, and they're used frequently. So I think also incorporating, just with with the pictograms and the use of digital directories and maps and directional signage, we would be adding bike share and transit stop information to some of the more pedestrian level directional signage and to, say, maps. We'd also want to make sure that it's showing up on digital directories and on your mobile phone directory information when you access the project's directory on your phone.
That makes total sense, and a great insight as well on just the choice of color for the bicycles themselves and weaving that into some consistent branding throughout the property. So that's a great insight, Sarah. Thank you. And thank you again. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think, we don't want to, say, junk up projects with tons and tons of signage. We like to find ways of integrating and attracting and combining what we do with clues that show up in architecture and lighting and landscape. So it doesn't always have to be a big sign or a big digital sign in order to help people and visitors determine, where they want to go or what the right path is.
Yeah, sounds like sometimes it's more subtle, ways of tying it together without having to be super overt.
Right. Kind of all the little pieces work together to get people to the right location.
It's great insight. Sarah, thank you so much again for all of this amazing information. It's a great way to kind of wrap up our entire webinar series. This has been, a journey for us where we've started out talking about different forms of transportation and ended up talking about pointing people to where to get it. And so looking at sort of the whole property and how to make it more connected. And I love the fact that you were even integrating that into your presentation about the connectivity with digital and otherwise. It's all part of making a property something that people can get to easily and want to continue to go to. And that's what I think, all of our property managers, property owners, and developers that we work with are looking for. So in conclusion, I'd like to remind our audience, if you could please take the survey that will go online immediately at the end of this webinar, and remind you that the webinar will be sent to you. There will be a link and it'll be available for download starting tomorrow. But want to thank everyone who attended today. Again, Sarah, all our previous panelists and audience members, as well as my colleagues at Wells & Associates who've made this webinar series such a success. Last but not least, if you have any questions about wayfinding that you either want to direct to Sarah or otherwise, you can contact my colleagues Courtney Menjivar or Lydia Shackelford. They're listed here. Their information is listed here, and they can either answer you directly or direct you to Sarah for any questions you might have, as well as any questions you might have had through other webinars throughout the series. Thanks again for attending, everyone, and we hope you have a great day.